Welcome back to the class. We are going to discuss a very important set of observations made by Max Weber regarding the phenomenon of social stratification. For students of sociology, this term is very important because it talks about how a society is stratified or how there are different divisions within the society, and usually we understand these divisions as hierarchically arranged, or stratification in other words is understood as the division of society into different strata, different strata, with an understanding that some of these strata are considered to be superior while others are considered to be inferior. So we know that there are different groups in every society, whether it is ethnic groups or linguistic groups or caste groups or religious groups. So we understand these groups as manifestations of diversity. So we call it as pluralism, we call it as diversity, we call it as multiculturalism in different sense of the words depending upon the political and cultural context. But when we talk about stratification, usually the examples given for stratification are, say, caste system in India, or racism in America and in European societies, or gender also is considered to be an example of stratification, where there are very distinguishable strata. There are different layers of people who are arranged in a vertical manner with the notion of superiority and inferiority. And you know that when we talk about racism, racial discrimination is a manifestation of this racial stratification. Similarly, caste discrimination is a manifestation of the stratification based on caste system. Some of the castes are considered to be superior, and while others are considered to be inferior. That has been the traditional way in which you visualize this ritual hierarchy or a vertical hierarchy, the hierarchical ritual scale on which certain castes are considered to be lower, certain other castes are considered to be higher. Now, Weber has something very important, a set of very important observations on this phenomenon of social stratification. And this theme of stratification has been one of the most central themes in sociology, because sociology is preoccupied with analyzing how different sections of societies are arranged and what are the consequences of this arrangement, because sociology as a discipline understands that no society is perfectly equal, or there is no complete absolute egalitarianism in every society. So sociology is really interested to know what are the arrangements of a particular society, how that it arranges different groups into different strata or different realms, and what are the consequences of that. So this whole debate or discussions about stratification is something very central to the debates of sociology. And we have discussed when we discussed Karl Marx, we discussed elaborately how Marx has a very powerful argument about seeing stratification through the lens of the classes. So the Marxian framework of stratification offers you a class-based understanding where, according to his definition of class, the people who own the means of production, according to this particular definition, he divides society into two categories, the bourgeois and proletariat. And now Weber enters into this debate, and he complicates the whole discussion. He disagrees with Marx, saying that a stratification of societies cannot be reduced to or cannot be seen only through the lens of class. Rather, number of other important categories or other important frameworks also need to be brought in. So we are going to discuss this important conversation between Marx and Weber. Social stratification, class, status groups and party. So Weber is talking about stratification based on class, status groups and party. Important contribution to study of the social structure, debate with Marxian explanation of social stratification. So as I mentioned, the study of social stratification is also the study of social structure. I don't think that I need to elaborate it further. Any society, whether it is a tribal society or an agrarian society, or a society in the rural setting, or a feudal society, or a modern society, the moment you talk about social stratification, what are the important groups of people and how people are divided in a particular society, we are actually talking about social structure. So in that sense, this constitutes one of the central themes of sociological analysis and the debate with Marxian explanation of social stratification, as I just discussed. Now, Weber provides a more expansive explanation to social stratification and offers critique of an economic deterministic model. So, we know that we discussed in the previous class as well about the debate about whether Marx actually puts forward an economic deterministic model. Okay, when we discussed the section on Marx, I made it a point to elaborate that there is very important debate whether Marx actually used the term deterministic or whether Marx used the term determine, or he used the German term to indicate influence, because the moment you say something determines something else, it is an absolutist argument. Okay, you don't give any leeway, you don't give any freedom or any space for the other thing to have its own agency or its own independence. So there are quite a lot of discussions and debate within Marxist about to what extent Marx was convinced of this deterministic quality, whereas a lot of other Marxists argue that this kind of a vulgar Marxism or a kind of a fundamentalist Marxism is the one which actually talk about a deterministic model. Rather, Marx was extremely aware of a kind of a reciprocal influence from the superstructure to the base as well. But this particular intervention of Weber, when it in his elaboration of social stratification, really helps to complicate Marxian notion of social stratification, which is based on his schema of class. Now, it is extremely useful to study societies like India, where ritual position offered by caste is important in deciding social position. Now, there has been very fascinating discussions about the usefulness and the lack of usefulness of a Marxian framework to understand society like India. Because for a typical Marxian framework, the existence of caste will not be something very important. And traditionally, a lot of Marxian sociologists have tried to reduce the relevance of caste into the question of class. And they also very rather innocently or superficially believed that if you bring in a classless society, if you address the question of class, the question of caste also will be resolved. Or they were heavily influenced by the Marxian framework that they refused to, or they did not really provide sufficient importance to the existence of caste. And now we realize that that was a very mistaken approach. That is a very erroneous approach, because caste has been a central concern of Indian society, and it has been kind of been so salient, at least for the past 2000 years, okay, defining and influencing even the present day manifestations of Indian society. Okay, so for societies like India, where the ritual position, when we talk about the caste hierarchy, the traditional caste hierarchy, certain groups like Brahmins are considered to be at the topmost position, because they are considered to be ritually superior. Okay, now in a Marxian scheme, you have no way of understanding this ritual superiority, because this ritual superiority emerges from a religious understanding, not from the economic understanding. So even a poor Brahmin will be considered as superior to a rich lower caste person, and Marxism has no way of understanding that, or Marxism has no way of explaining that. Okay, so in a society like India, where this ritual positions or ritual theological or ritual or religious markers influence your position in a hierarchy, this is something extremely important. And so he talks about stratification based on class, status, group and party. And this also is something very important, which party Weber talks about. Using this term, Weber talks about power. It is political power. Now, let us see what is Weberian discussion on class, and in what extent, to what extent his definition of class differs from that of Marx. It's an interesting discussion. So for Weber, a class consists of those persons who have a similar ability to obtain positions in a society, procure goods and services for themselves, and enjoy them via an appropriate lifestyle. It should be recognized immediately that a class is defined in part by status considerations, the lifestyle of the stratum to which one belongs. Now, this is an important observation. So, for Weber, class is a group of people who belong to a similar economic condition, and this economic condition is not solely defined like Marx on the basis of this means of on the ownership of the means of production. Rather, they have a similar ability to obtain possession in society, procure goods and services for themselves, and enjoy via an appropriate lifestyle. So, a group of people who have almost identical kind of lifestyles, okay, lifestyles in the sense the kind of services and goods that they can use for their consumption. You know that when you look into society, you have this extremely rich group, the upper class, then in a very general sense, then you have this middle class, you have this lower middle class, then you have the extremely poor people. Okay, so this distinction is not only on the basis of amount of money that they generate, that they make in every month or every day. It is also in terms of the kind of expenditure, the kind of consumption that they have. For example, in terms of leisure, okay, in terms of leisure, how do they consume their time for leisure, or in terms of education, or in terms of say health. Which are the hospitals that they go for their health issues. So, when you look into these consumptions, going out for food or leisure, vacations, or the kind of quality of education, the kind of dress that they wear, the kind of gadgets that they use, if you analyze this kind of questions of consumption, then you will see that there is marked difference from the poorest of the poor to that of the richest of the rich. That's a huge difference. And this difference is based on all these things, the ability to obtain possessions in society, procure goods and services for themselves, and enjoy them by an appropriate lifestyle. It should be recognized immediately that a class is defined in part by status consideration. Okay, so this lower class, the poorest of the poor, definitely have lower social status, and the elites, the richest of the rich, or the extremely people belong to the upper class, they are bestowed with very high degree of social status. So the lifestyle or the stratum to which one belongs. So a Weberian definition of class is not on the basis of the ownership of means of production, rather your membership in a group that is defined by your lifestyle, your consumption, and your membership in a group of people who have similar kind of expenditure, lifestyle, and consumption patterns. So people's membership in a class can be determined objectively based on their power to dispose of goods and services. Okay, so you can objectively decide the class in which you belong to, or somebody belongs to, by trying to understand based on their power to dispose of goods and services. So to what extent somebody can buy the goods and services, okay, how much money that they can dispose to buy the services and goods is an important objective indication to understand the people's membership in a class. For this reason, Weber believes that one's class situation is, in this sense, ultimately a market situation. Okay, so the class in which you belong is definitely decided or determined by the market situation. For example, education. Take the case of an education. One family needs to send their children to the school. So, what kind of education is affordable to them? Can they send their children to a school, a private school, which collects huge amount of money as capitation fee and also huge amount of money as tuition fees every year? Or if they are not able to afford that, then what are the options for them? And if they are coming from extremely poor background, the only option for them is to send their children to the government schools, okay, where either education is completely free or education costs very less amount of money. Now, this is purely a kind of a market decision, or the kind of goods that you can buy, the kind of gadgets that you can buy, the kind of furniture that you can buy, the kind of vehicles that you can buy, okay, or the kind of apparels that you can buy, or the kind of tourist destinations where you can go during your vacation. So, each of these things Weber argues, is defined by a market situation and is indicative of your class position. A person's class situation is also objectively determined, with the result that people can be ranked by their common economic characteristics and life chances. Okay, so it's also objectively determined with the result that people can be ranked by their common economic characteristic. As I told you, the amount of money that they generate, their income, either it could be in the form of salary or it could be the kind of profit that they make, and life chances. Life chances means the examples that I mentioned earlier. Okay, for example, if somebody falls sick in your family, okay, where do you take the sick person to? Do you take the sick person to a government hospital, a private hospital, a corporate hospital? Okay, all these things depend upon usually your ability and willingness to spend money. So he talks about two broad kind of classes, especially during Weber's time. One is the rentiers. Rentiers are those who live primarily off fixed incomes from the investment or trust funds. As a result of their possession of capital and values that they had acquired over time, the landowners chose to lead a less overtly acquisitive lifestyle. Weber called them rentiers because they did not work to increase their assets but simply lived off them, using their time for purposes other than earning a living. So maybe Weber talks about it because that's a time when Weber see a lot of people, the erstwhile feudal lords, okay, they are finding it difficult to adapt and adjust to the modern times. And these extremely rich feudal lords, they have huge money as ancestral property. So they might have huge agricultural land, or they must have sold off the land and then have huge fixed income from investment or trust funds, and they are considered to be the continuation, or they belong to the lineage of extremely high status family groups. Okay, so as a result of their possession and capital and values that they have acquired over time, the landowners chose to lead a less overtly acquisitive lifestyle. Okay, they are not interested in, or they don't generally try to create more wealth. Weber called them as rentiers because they did not work to increase their assets but simply lived off them. Imagine a family who have sold off their land, and that money, a big fortune, is invested in some bank or invested in some mutual fund or some other thing, and they live off that particular interest. Or they have bought some huge commercial business, and then on the basis of commercial building, and they are living off the rent that they get from that, using their time for purposes other than earning a living. And the second group, according to Weber, is the entrepreneurs, are those such as merchants, ship owners and bankers who own and operate business. Weber called them a commercial or entrepreneurial class because they actually work their property for the economic gain that it produces, with the result that in absolute terms the members of the entrepreneurial class often have more economic power but less social honor or prestige than do rentiers. So the second group of entrepreneurs are the people who may not be the traditionally rich people, okay, but who have entered into business or commerce, like say ship ownership or bankers or merchants or business, and who have amassed lot more money, but those who do not have a family tradition. So that is why, but less social honor or prestige. They don't belong to some very well-known families. They don't have the kind of a pedigree, if you can use that particular term. They are not associated with some very honorable or honored family line. They are this newly rich people, the novice rich, who became rich very shortly, and they are usually looked down upon by the typical aristocratic rentiers as per Weberian argument. So to differentiate between those who work as an avocation and those who work because they want to increase their asset, that is, this distinction reflects a fundamental difference in values. So whether you are comfortable in living off the money that you have, you are not really keen in increasing money, and because you you have huge amount of money at your disposal, and you have a very you belong to a very reputable family, or you don't have much to boast about your reputation, but you are really working hard, and then you are increasing your wealth day by day. And so these two things Weber argues there is a distinction. This distinction reflects fundamental difference in values. Both rentiers and entrepreneurs can monopolize the purchase of expensive consumer items. Both pursue monopolistic sales and pricing policies, whether legally or not. Okay? To some extent, both control opportunities for others to acquire wealth and property. Finally, both rentiers and entrepreneurs monopolize costly status privileges such as education that provide young people with future contacts and skills. So these two groups, this rentiers as well as entrepreneurs, according to Weber, belongs to the almost similar kind of class, because they have quite a lot of similarities, even while their value systems differ significantly. So both pursue monopolistic sales and pricing policies, whether legally or not, because they always try to protect their business interests and their way of making money, and to some extent control opportunities for others to acquire wealth and property when they work as a kind of a monopolistic group. And finally, both rentiers and entrepreneurs monopolize costly status privilege, okay, because they are the ones who represent the cream. They are the ones who represent the elite groups in terms of lifestyle, in terms of taste, in terms of aptitudes. This very important sociologist Bourdieu has this very important argument about cultural capital, how the certain abilities are considered to be highly valued, certain traits, certain qualities are considered to be highly valued, and these values are kind of monopolistic values of the upper classes, certain tastes, certain exposure, certain certain kind of orientations towards certain ideas and other things, such as and costly status privileges such as education that provide young people with future contacts and skills. And you can easily understand that some of the very elite schools across the globe, including India, these elite schools are the place where children from the extremely rich family go and they study together, and once they grow up, these people, their relationship itself that they developed during the school will be extremely useful for them to network together and then take their contacts and then business forward. Next is the middle class. So this first one, the rentiers and the entrepreneurs belong to the first group, the higher caste or higher class, and then comes the middle class, according to Weber, comprises those individuals who today would be called the white collar workers, because the skill that they sell do not involve manual labor. Public officials such as politicians and administrators, managers of business, and so on. So Weber talks about the middle class as the people, they are employed somewhere, but they are not the people who sell their manual workers. This distinction between white collar workers and blue collar workers. Blue collar workers are the people whom we consider as the laborers, or the people whom we consider as the proletariat, whereas the middle class or the white collar workers, they are they are the managers, they are the supervisors, they are the bureaucrats, they are the teachers, doctors. So these people who use their certain skills and their intellectual ability rather than their physical ability are considered to be this middle class or the white collar workers. Worth of their services and their levels of their skills. Both factors are important indicators of people's ability to obtain positions, purchase goods, and enjoy them. So, what is something so distinctive of this white collar workers or this middle class is the worth of their services and the levels of their skills. Okay, they are educated a lot, and they are able to attain this white collar status only through education, because they have amassed certain, they have mastered certain skills. They are able to offer some very valuable services, and these factors are important indicators of people's ability to obtain position, purchase goods, and enjoy them. We know that how when the skill of a doctor or a skill of an engineer or a skill of a teacher is highly valued, and how that becomes important in a society. Because their skills are relatively high demand, and in industrial societies, these people generally have more economic and political power than those who work with their hands do. So in comparison with the blue collar workers who have to really toil in the field or in the mines or in the factories or in the shop floor or a company, okay, in comparison with these people, this group of people who belong to this the white collar workers, because of their skills, are in relatively high demand in industrial societies. They are generally have more economic and political power than the people who are considered to be the blue collar workers or the manual workers or the proletariat. Then finally, the less privileged group, property less classes, comprise of people who today would be called the blue collar workers because their skills primarily involve manual labor. Okay, or without explanation, Weber said that such people could be divided into three levels: skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled workers. So here it is the group of people whom we are familiar with, or the group of people whom Marx describes as the proletariat. Okay, the people who have nothing with them or nothing else with them other than their ability to sell their labor power. Okay, they have no other resources, they have no other capital, they do not own anything. Their only ability is to sell their work to the highest bidder. Their ability is to sell their body. Now, so this is something very important point when it comes to as a debate with Marx, because Marx is maybe the most important scholar who talks about classes, who talks about different types of people with different set of skills. So here there is a very, very interesting debate between Marx and Weber about this distinction of or this division of people into different classes based on these qualities. Now, as I told you, this Weber's understanding of class is quite different from a Marxian understanding, and I personally feel that it is a more broader, encompassing and more more interesting division compared to that of a Marxian analysis, which was very reductive in his times. The second group is the status group, according to Weber. So status groups comprises those individuals who share a specific positive or negative social estimations of honor. Weber thus used the concept of status and status group to distinguish the spheres of privilege evaluation expressed by people's lifestyle from that of monetary calculation expressed by their economic behavior. So if this economic behavior is something that is based, that is the basis of the class analysis, Weber argues that the sphere of prestige evaluation, okay, how certain families, how certain groups, certain individuals are respected in a society on the basis of certain virtues. So what could be these virtues? A noble family line, to know that somebody belongs to this particular family, a family considered to be an aristocratic family, a family considered to be a noble family. So that gives so much of importance and prestige and honor to that. And the best example in is caste in India. Okay, we know that the kind of respect or the kind of prestige associated with upper castes, okay, whether it's justifiable or unjustifiable is a completely different question. Okay, but the very fact that somebody belongs to Brahmin is always a fact of higher prestige and higher respect in comparison with somebody who is traditionally associated as somebody who is seen from a caste that is seen as a lower caste or a polluting caste. So status groups are comprised of those individuals who share a specific positive or negative social estimation or honor. Weber thus uses this concept of status and status group to distinguish the sphere of prestige evaluation from that of monetary calculation. Status and honor are based on the judgment that people make about another's background, breeding, character, morals and community standing. And so a person's membership in a status group is always subjectively determined. And this is very, very interesting, because the status group, you can't really define or decide your status group. It has to be accepted, reciprocated, acknowledged by the others. And this is a very interesting thing. See, in the case of economic position or economic class, you can increase your wealth, you can create more wealth, and you can go up in the ladder. But in the case of status group, your status is always accepted. It must be accepted and acknowledged by others. Only then you consider, or they consider, you belonging to a particular high status group. And this is an extremely important point again when you analyze the caste system in India, because lower castes were discriminated, they were humiliated, okay, throughout at least for the past 2000 years, because of the fact that they were seen as people who belong to this lower caste, and mainly because they are, or they do work with some of these polluting jobs. Okay, so an individual, irrespective of how good or bad he or she is often given a very low status or a very high status on the basis of these perceived qualities. And these qualities could be that of breeding, character, morals, and community standing. Weber says that status always rests on distance and exclusiveness. By people extend hospitality only to social equals. People restrict potential marriage partners to social equals through various mechanisms. People practice unique social conventions and activities. Thus, they tend to join organizations such as churches and clubs and spend their leisure time with others who share similar beliefs and lifestyles. People try to monopolize privileged mode of acquisition such as their property or occupations. Now, he is talking about an extremely important mechanism through which the status groups perpetuate themselves, or status groups are able to hold on to their privilege. You must be knowing that there is a very close connection between the status group and privileges, okay, historical privileges or social privileges that certain groups enjoy. And he argues that the status group is always rests on distance and exclusiveness. Okay, this high status group is always seen as an important commodity. It's an important virtue which has to be very fiercely protected. Okay, and it rests on the exclusiveness. You don't open that membership to others. It's something like some very elite clubs in India, especially those started in British period, where getting a membership is very difficult. Even if you are ready to pay, lakhs of rupees, it will not be given, but it is always limited to some of the most elite groups, or some elite member will have to recommend you. And if that has to happen, you have to have a kind of connection with that, or you will be evaluated on the basis of your social standing, your your income and your prestige, and a host of other things. So this maintenance of exclusion or maintenance of exclusivity is something very, very important for each of these status groups. Unlike class, okay, unlike class where nobody tries to make that kind of an exclusivity. If you have the wherewithal, if you have the ability to create more money, you can get into that group of millionaires or billionaires or the richest people. But a status group is quite different. So people extend hospitality only to social equals. I don't think that I need to explain that further. Okay, the clubs or your friendship circles and other things, they always try to maintain this exclusivity. Then people restrict potential marriage partners to social equals through various mechanisms. And in the case of India, we have a well entrenched institutionalized system where any other marriages other than same caste marriage would be very seriously dealt with. We know that even in contemporary times we hear about honor killings where the son or daughter would be murdered if they dare to fall in love with somebody, especially if that person is coming from a lower caste background. But even in European countries, even in Western world, this is ensured, okay, not on the basis of caste but through a number of other mechanisms. So this restriction of potential marriage is an extremely important one. When you talk about the issue of compatibility, you say that always families needs to be compatible with each other when alliances are sought. And this compatibility is nothing but this kind of an exclusiveness, the kind of a compatibility in terms of status. Then people practice unique social conventions and activities. Thus, they tend to join organizations such as churches, clubs, and spend their leisure time with others who share similar beliefs and lifestyles. You can imagine, for example, a golf course, and the people who come there to play golf would be there would be a group of extremely elite, rich people, and it's not that easy for an ordinary person, a person coming from a blue collar or family, background, or a white collar background to break through into that place and then very comfortably start playing golf. It's impossible. I'm giving golf because golf is always considered as a game of the elite. So a club which has a golf club and facilities would be definitely a place of the rich, of the elite, and it has a strong exclusive character. Then people try to monopolize privileged modes of acquisition such as their property or occupation. So these are the people who who are highly specialists in certain things. They have a huge amount of property, so they have this highly privileged forms of resources. Then the third important feature that Weber talks about is party, and this is another point where Marx argued a party is nothing but it's the political power. So Marx kind of included political power within that of economy. I hope you remember that. So for Marx, the ruling class is always the class who belong to the bourgeoisie. Okay, but here Weber differs with Marx. So party denotes the house of power, or the way in which power is organized and used to control members in a society. It's nothing but the political power, how the society organizes itself so that there is its members are governed efficiently. In contrast to Marx, who tended to view power and status as mere reflections of who owned the means of production, Weber argued that class, status groups and party constitute separate bases of stratification, although they often highly correlate with each other. And this is the central difference between Marx and Weber, something that I have been mentioning all throughout. Okay, so for Marx, the central concern is that of economy, and he tends to subsume the status and power under economy. I hope you remember, we talked about this base and superstructure. For Marx, this economy is the base and everything else is a reflection of that, which Weber does not agree with that. Weber argues that both ritual status as well as political power are independent spheres. They cannot be reduced to that of economy. Weber's analysis of stratification emphasized that when there is a high correlation among class, status groups and party, that is, those high or low on one are also high and low on the other two. We are talking about the consolidation of power. The people who are ritually superior, politically powerful, are most often they are the economically well off as well. And in the case of India, this is extremely accurate statement. Okay, there is a very specific correspondence between the caste structure and the class structure. Okay, the people who are considered to be the traditional upper caste are by definition upper class as well. I am talking on the basis of this evidence collected from various surveys, including NSS, various this National Sample Survey reports very undoubtedly state that. And people who belong to the lower caste, the groups traditionally considered to be the lower, the OBCs and Dalits and tribals, they occupy the lowest strata, not only in terms of the ritual position but also in terms of their economic position. Okay, and monopolization of resources and resentment of others. So this particular consolidation of all these forms of privilege, whether it is money or power or status, this leads to monopolization of resources and the resentment of the vast majority of others. And Weber thinks that will lead to kind of social change, but unlike Marx, who always looked at these social conflicts as something welcoming, something positive, Weber does not take up that particular position. And Weber also does not look at that, he doesn't have that kind of an activist zeal of Karl Marx, as you know that, as we are familiar with that. Okay, so he is not an activist, he was not a political activist, he was not a political party member, rather he was a sociologist, he was a social scientist who wanted to objectively analyze the reality. So so the point that we discussed, or the theme that we discussed today, is about stratification, a very important theme, and especially for students of sociology, the dialogue between Marx and Weber becomes very, very important through his analysis of social stratification as well as his analysis of religion and society. Okay, so let us stop today's class and we'll meet for the next class. Thank you.